Hey folks, we're going to get started here in just a moment, but I want to take just a second and make sure that everyone can see and hear me okay. Do me a favor and in the comments, let me know if you can see me, hear me, all that stuff. Also write a comment in case you can't hear me asking you if you can hear me. Nick, Drew, fantastic, Jason. Yeah, all right, good. Sounds like we are all set. Okay. I've got 8:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Let me bring us over here. Just to kind of set the stage for what we're talking about today, we are in, let's see, module 10. Okay, so I'm going to come over here to the modules just to kind of, where am I? Here I am, I'm right there. And we're going to scroll down to module 10. Here we are. So today we are talking about general and industrial management, principles of scientific management, and methods of influence and control. I'll give a little preamble to that in a moment. But one thing I would like to remind everyone is all the materials that I go over, of course, I'm shooting this video and I will publish it to YouTube so everyone can access it. But I want to remind you of one little thing. Here in the syllabus, remember there's a link here to another website called My Course Hub. And this is My Course Hub. And you can access all the materials that we go over today by clicking here on Learning Resources and then 1050. And then we scroll down to, voila, Module 10, where we will talk about general and industrial management, principles of scientific management, and methods of influence and control. So you'll have this video, you have today's live, stream, and you have these PowerPoint presentations and additional videos if you want to take a look. Okay, so with that, let me kind of give just a little bit of a preamble in what this is all about. If you remember, last week we talked about how, there's this ongoing contention between labor and management, labor and capital. And, we know that Karl Marx called this out with alienated labor. We know that Adam Smith called it out, saying that, if we keep going down this path, then workers will just become as stupid as a beast as can be imagined. And we also know that Adam Smith said, at the end of the day, labor will always lose, capital management will always win because they have a bigger runway and all that stuff. And then last week we talked about Clifford and how he treated his employees there in the mines. But we also got a peek of the future because we looked at Andrew Carnegie. And Carnegie said, listen. We want to make money. We want to make money hand over fist. And there is no way in the world we're going to make money unless we have industrial peace. And by this, he meant no stoppage in the work. We always want the work to go forward. And if you remember, he talked about, where's my camera? There we go, four principles that he really wanted to drive home to make sure that he had industrial peace. One of them was managers who knew what the heck they were doing. This was important to him. Remember, we said, hey, man, in the past, managers were, the son-in-laws and the sons and the cousins and all, you had to be inside. It was a real good old boys club of pure nepotism. So managers weren't hired because they knew what they were doing. They were hired because there was some sort of DNA involved. Well, Carnegie wanted to change that. He wanted to bring real science to management, real skills, real understanding. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's start with general and industrial management. I'm going to pull up this general industrial management. This is by Henri Fayol. Henry Fayol, but Henri Fayol, if you want to speak en français aujourd'hui. And what he's really talking about is, listen, managers have one job. I should just use one finger, right? One job. And that is to organize the people into the body corporate. As it says here, the people that comprise the organization, management is all about getting the sum of the parts from a human capital perspective to work together effectively and efficiently. This is key. We've got all these people together, and I'll tell you what, when you put people together, funky things happen. And the goal is to get the whole to be greater than the sum of its parts. Now, for a little bit of background, my PhD is in industrial organizational psychology, which means I studied the psychological aspects of groups and organizations down to the umpteenth degree. And I can tell you that managing organizations and getting productivity and efficiency and efficacy out of a group is really challenging. And that is the art and science of management. And this is the first time in basically the history of capitalism that we're bringing the art and science of management to bear. Now, let's make sure that we understand the difference between effective and efficient. Effective is you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You are accomplishing what you set out to accomplish. Efficient means you accomplished it with as little input of resources as possible, but as maximum return as possible. So I'm putting in very little time, very little money, very little resources, but I'm getting tons of value and output from this little investment. Management is all about achieving this with organizations. Now, one of the things, and this is a quote from the reading, so I'm not going to read it for you here. You can read the quote on your own. But one of the things that Fayol really talks about is, he says, listen, this is kind of squishy art stuff, right? He really rejects the notion that there are absolute rules and guidelines into how to manage an organization of people. Now, this is significant because we are actually going to come across some people that say, no, there are absolute guidelines. There aren't. Fayol is right. When it comes to managing organizations, it's really just guidelines, not absolute rules that are going to get us there, which means managers need to be situational managers and situational leaders. What is the right kind of leadership depends on the situation. And so we're going to look at some examples of this. Situational examples. So let's say that you're a leader and you are in a situation in which employees need information but don't have access to the information. Well, leadership in this case, management in this case, is an act of education and communication. So let's take, for example, our current COVID-19, the coronavirus situation here. A lot of what our leaders are doing is educating us. You know how many feet apart you should be. You know what social distancing means. You know what stay home, stay safe, stay home means. You know what the symptoms are. This is because our leaders have spent a lot of time educating us because we lacked the information we needed to be safe and effective. And so this is an example of situational leadership in a situation in which employees lacked information. Another one is sometimes employees might feel excluded from the whole, in this case, leaders need to find ways to increase participation and get people to feel like they're involved. So in the corporate world, this could mean things like profit sharing and inclusion in decision making and involvement in processes. We are going through this a little bit ourselves as well right now. So it's really, for a lot of you who are used to being lecture students, there is a risk that you would feel kind of like no longer part of a group, no longer part of a class. Now, you guys are rocking it because you're attending this and you're watching it. But I've got news for you. There's some of our fellow students who have just kind of fallen off the map. And so it's my job to figure out ways to get them participating again, to get them involved once again. So I'm sending out little videos and I'm sending out memes and I'm reminding folks of these live sessions and I'm reaching out to them one-on-one. That's a way for me as a manager of this classroom to increase participation and involvement. Once again, different situation calls for different kinds of management. Now, another one is when anxiety is really high. Now, in this case, managers need to provide facilitation and support. This is like the perfect time to be talking about this, guys. So right now, anxiety is really high because of COVID-19, which means, you need and I need from your leaders, and hopefully you see me as one of your managers, and I need from my managers up at Salt Lake Community College facilitation of solutions such as live streaming and WebEx and Zoom and Canvas and so forth, as well as support for these functions. I also need them to tell me, my leaders, hey, we've got this. We're going to support everyone. Don't worry, nobody is going to be left behind. And I need support. So, for example, the school is paying for many accounts and a lot of software that normally they would not pay for. But now they are paying for it because it's part of facilitation and support. And it's also this reassurance, and I'm giving you this reassurance right now, that you stick with me and I'm going to take care of you. Nobody is going to get left behind in this class if you stick with me. Okay? That's an example of how management needs to step up in times when anxiety and uncertainty is high. But now we also have situations in which we need to influence people, and yet these people are resisting, but they're also people of power and influence. So let me explain what that means. There's a lot of times when somebody might resist a direction that the leader or manager is trying to support and push forward. However, if you don't have a lot of power and influence, you really can't resist too much. But some people have a great degree of power and influence and yet are resisting. How do you bring them into line? Well, it's through negotiation and agreement. You cannot ignore the fact that there are many people out there who have a great deal of influence and power among the employee population. And if you ignore these people, they can turn the employee population against you. And so you need to have the skills to negotiate with these folks and come to a common understanding. And that's something that the old world managers, they didn't know how to do that. There was no negotiating and coming to agreement. They would just say you're fired and be jerks, right? No, you can't do that anymore because then the work would stop. All right, next one is when the organization is at risk and employees have few avenues to effectively resist. Let me show you what I mean. Here you want to use explicit and implicit coercion. Now, I know that this sounds awful, but no, sometimes you need this, and we're experiencing it right now. Our leadership has given us the directive to stay safe, stay at home. And okay, we're going to do that. But some of us may say, you know what, I'm immortal. I'm immune, right? I've never been sick a day of my life. I'm going to go off and do what I want to do. Well, you're going to get warnings, and if you get multiple warnings, you'll get a citation. Furthermore, you'll get shamed by the people around you and the organization around you. And furthermore, if you try to go anywhere and they temperature check you, you'll get in trouble. So, for example, my wife and daughter work in the medical industry. My wife works at the hospital, my daughter at a clinic, and they'll temperature check you each time you walk in. And furthermore, if you're just a visitor, you're not allowed in. Well, you might go, hey, you're getting in the way of my free rights to go wherever I want and not be accosted and have my privacy invaded by you taking the temperature. Wherein the leadership is going to say, yeah, so sad, too bad. You're not allowed in, we're taking your temperature. Because the safety of the whole and the safety of you are at risk. So as this picture shows in this PowerPoint presentation, you know, when firefighters are trying to rip open the door of a burning car, they are going to force you out. They are going to explicitly coerce you physically to get you out. And in that situation, that's the right thing to do. And as we see with COVID-19, sometimes this is the right thing to do. Okay, so one of the other things that Henri Fayol talks about is one of these things called the unity of command. He says that it is very important that organizations basically have one voice, one leader, because if you're getting direction from multiple leaders and multiple voices, then it's kind of like, who am I supposed to listen to? Now, once again, with our current crisis, this is a very good example where if we get one message from one leader and a different message from a different leader, and then yet another message from a different expert, we're kind of going, okay, what am I supposed to do? This is why it's very important for leadership to be completely lined up for the employee, and in our case, the general population. So he really pushed hard to have one line of leadership. Another thing he talks about is, you know, managers need to appreciate that what we are actually asking our followers to do is subordinate their individual interests. Now, let me make sure that that's clear. When a follower agrees to do something that a leader says, when an employee agrees to do something that a manager says, the employee is, by definition, saying, I am going to put off what I would rather do to do what you are telling me to do. So, right now, you are attending this live stream or you are watching this live stream. There's something else that you could be doing. And yet you have subordinated, you have pushed down your individual interests in the interest of your grade, your academic career, your career goals, and things like that. And so Fayol says it's important to understand that, you know, people, you know, they might be, you know, people have their own ambitions, they have their own selfishness, they have their own weaknesses and so forth. And so anytime that you're giving them direction and they're stepping up, you need to recognize that because they're putting the organization ahead of themselves. Another thing that he really talks about is, well, what is it that is going to motivate people to do what's right for the organization? I'm going to make sure, yes, okay. Now, something I'd like to share with you is oftentimes managers might think, bad managers might think, well, the only way I can get them to do is to either pay them more or threaten them. And since I can't pay them more, I'm going to threaten them. No, no, it doesn't work like that. Now, if you want, sometime we can get into a really good, deep conversation about motivational theory, because that's garbage. And I'd love to expound upon that. But I want to give you a couple of examples here. Motivational theory says there's really two types of motivation. There's extrinsic motivation and then intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is, I'll do it if you pay me. If you give me money, if you give me benefits, if you give me some sort of financial security, sure, I'll do it. I'll do it if you pay me. On the other hand, intrinsic motivation is, I'll pay you to let me do it. Now, I want to think about the power of this, right? If somebody loves doing something so much, in some situations, they will pay you to let them do it. Do you have any hobbies? Do you enjoy any sports? Do you engage in any personal sort of hobby or sport that requires you to pay a lot of money? Say like golf. Golfing is not cheap. All this filming and stuff that I do, all this gear that I've purchased, not cheap. And so I am paying other people a lot of money to allow me to do this. And no, I don't get paid to do this. I'm not monetized. And you are paying people a lot of money to allow you to golf or to, bike or whatever it is that you do. That's because you are intrinsically motivated. Intrinsic motivation is always stronger than extrinsic. And a good manager knows how to kind of fiddle with the intrinsic levers. There's another thing that is important to consider, and that's called hygiene. Now, there's a theory out there called Herzberg's two-factor theory. And Fayol alludes to this. Here's the idea, is that there are some things that we think motivate people, but in fact they don't motivate. They just keep you from becoming demotivated. And I'll give you my favorite one, pay. It's right there at the top, right there. Let me show you what I mean. Pay does not motivate. A lot of poor managers think that it does, but it doesn't. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say that I'm your boss and I come in one day and I say, great news, I'm going to give you a 5% raise. What are you going to say or do? Well, thank you. Cool. That's awesome. 5%. And I appreciate that. And you might go out to dinner that night. Who knows, right? But it's going to kind of make your day. 5% raise. But you're not going to deliver 5% more productivity. You're not going to work 5% harder. You're just going to keep doing what you were doing that got you that 5% raise. So I, as a manager, would not benefit materially by giving you a 5% raise, except maybe keep you around. But now watch this. I come in one day and I say, I'm going to dock your pay 5%. I am decreasing your pay by 5%. What are you going to do? You are going to get PO'd. You are going to be completely demotivated. You're probably going to start calling in sick. You're going to start looking for another job. You are going to complain and you are going to spread nasty rumors and you're going to try to get other people on board. And odds are you could take down the company. Wow, right? I give you 5%. It doesn't do a whole lot. I take away 5%. And I've just hosed myself. So the thing that a good manager needs to do is figure out what does that person need in order to be productive and so forth, and what can I give in addition that will truly motivate. And as it says here on the slide, the things that really motivate are meaningful and challenging work, recognition for accomplishments, feeling of achievement. These things really motivate. And so this is something we'll be exploring in a little bit later in this course. Okay, so that is the general principles of management that we just went over. By the way, I will be opening up for comments and questions and so forth at the end. That means that our next one, folks, is going to be Principles of Scientific Management. And so we'll update this. Now, Principles of Scientific Management. This is by Frederick Taylor. Highly influential. A lot of what he did is with us today, and it's almost infuriating how effective it is and yet damaging to our psyche. I'm going to show you what I mean, okay? Principles of Scientific Management. There's actually a video, and if we were doing this in our lecture class, I would play this video right here. So I invite you to pull up this PowerPoint presentation as I showed you how to do by going to mycoursehub.net. That is where all the PowerPoint presentations are. Anyway, let's just get down to what he talks about. Here's the idea. He is the father of time. I think they're called, time motion studies. There we go. Thank you. Time motion studies. And what he did is he said, listen, in order for employees to be productive and efficient and effective, we need to figure out what is the least amount of investment of time and motion necessary to get the greatest output of productivity. So one of the examples that is used in the reading is about that of a bricklayer. Now, bricklayers were tradesmen, and by the way, being a good bricklayer, freaking difficult. I mean, these people study for years as apprentices and journeymen and so forth. I mean, it's not easy. And so every bricklayer kind of had their own style, their own approach, their own process. And of course, every bricklayer thought that their process was the best process. But, Frederick Taylor said, well, has anybody ever measured this scientifically? Have we ever done controlled studies to figure out what is truly the best process? Because if we could figure out what is truly the best process, we can then apply that process, require everybody in the organization to follow that process. That way we know that everybody is operating with maximum efficiency and being highly effective. Now, so he would say, okay, well, the bricks need to be at such and such a level, and you need to hold the trowel in such and such a way, and the trowel needs to be such and such size and shape, and you need to have so many pounds of mortar, cement, whatever on. He would do all these things to figure out exactly what was the best way to do it through scientific processes. Now, if any of you have ever worked in, say, the fast food industry, you know exactly what time motion studies have led to. The reason when you go to, what do you go to? Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, Arby's, I don't know. But the reason when you go to these places all around the country, the food tastes exactly the same, is because every employee in the organization is going through the exact same process in creating the food. And so that way, maximum efficiency is in play. Now, I have a good friend who owns a whole bunch of McDonald's franchises here in the Valley, and he goes nuts on this stuff. He loves this stuff. He loves figuring out how to get just that half a cent more a minute, because a half a cent a minute in profit spread across all his stores and all the hours means some real money. I'll give you another example. Back in the old days with a slot machine in Vegas, not that any of you have ever been to Vegas, right? The slot machine, well, you'd have to put a coin in the machine and pull the arm. I need to, get on video only. Put a coin, pull the arm. Put in a coin, go down, pick up a coin, put it in, pull the arm. Go down, pick up a coin, put it in, pull the arm. Well, the smarty pantses at Vegas realized that this was unnecessary, wasteful motion and was delaying the amount of time between each play of the machine. And so what do we do now? Well, of course, now we have this preloaded card, preloaded with our money. We stick that card in once, and then we push a button. There is no wasted time between each play of the machine. And so because they've gone from a card to a button, from pick up a coin, put it in, and pull the arm, they now have much more productivity out of that machine and basically can get your money a hell of a lot faster. That's classic Frederick Taylor philosophy. Now, if you go off and watch this video, and I recommend you do, it's a cool little video. This particular video talks about how he would figure out the perfect size of shovel, because some shovels would pick up too much stuff, or whatever it is you were shoveling, and some would pick up too little. Now, too much meant that it was harder to kind of work the shovel. Too little meant that they were having to make too many trips. He would figure out the exact right amount. Now, if you go off and go, I went to the wrong one. I apologize. If you go off to this PowerPoint presentation, there's also a video there about the bricklaying aspect. Now, like I said, here's the thing. The problem with Frederick Taylor was that it turned a human being into just a cog in the machine. And so he would make sure that every single human being just did 2 or 3 very clean, exact motions. So pick it up, fold it, bend it, hang it up. Pick it up, fold it, bend it, hang it up. Pick it up, fold it, bend it, hang it up. I can't screw that up. And so he would break the work down into tiny little pieces like that. And if you line up 100 people, each doing their thing exactly, then at the end of that line, you have a product that is extremely effective. It is exactly what you wanted it to be, and can be mass produced. Now, I don't want to be that cog in the machine, but here's the thing. It was really effective. This is what brought about mass production. Henry Ford did not invent the assembly line, but he way perfected it. And he was a strong follower of Frederick Taylor, and his assembly line was able to create, very consistent quality parts all throughout. Now, this sort of thing exists today, but luckily we're getting better at, making people an integral part rather than just a meaningless cog. One thing that we try to do in today's business is we practice something called Six Sigma Lean. And what Lean does is it tries to eliminate all waste from a system. So I'll give you an example. Lean does not want overproduction because you are wasting resources into producing something that you can't sell. Lean doesn't want people just sitting around on their hands or machinery going unused because that is wasted time, and time is money. Lean doesn't want unnecessary transportation. Lean hates excess inventory. Excess inventory, that's awful. Here you are filling space that you could be using for production and instead filling it with unsellable product. That's horrible. That's horribly wasted. Lean doesn't like unnecessary motion. If any of you are into cooking, you know that there's this thing called mise en place. You get your elbows in close. Again, I should be on full video for this. And you make sure that everything is exactly where you want it, so you don't need to go through a whole lot of unnecessary motion to produce what you want. And Lean hates defects because defects then mean recalls and a lot of money, things like that. Well, these are, Six Sigma Lean is where Frederick Taylor's ideas continue to influence business today. Okay, that's 2 out of 3, guys. We're almost there. Let us now go to methods of influence and control. And we'll update this. Influence and control. Now, here's the thing about the idea of methods of influence and control. That sounds devious. It sounds manipulative. It's not, especially when it comes to Douglas McGregor. Douglas McGregor, the author of Methods of Influence and Control, is also the founder of Theory X and Theory Y. And we'll touch upon that here, but it's definitely a very progressive view of people management. And this is what's starting to come about at this time in the history of capitalism. We all try to influence and control those around us. I don't like the word control because we never have absolute control of anything, including ourselves, but we do need to understand how can we better influence situations. So I really invite you to later on come to this PowerPoint presentation and watch this video on power. Here's the thing about power, and he talks about it here, this gentleman. This is a TED Talk, I believe. We really don't like to talk about power. We have this love-hate relationship with power. We find it distasteful to seek after power. We look at power with a high degree of skepticism. And we generally just are distrustful of it. But this is unfortunate because those in power love the fact that we are distrustful of it, that we find it distasteful to talk about it, that we find it somehow, disdainful and we want to stay away from it. Because the more we want to ignore power, the more those in power can influence us and exercise power over us. So this TED Talk, or this talk, really says there is a high need for power literacy in our society. And folks, I could not agree more. We need to understand how power works. And we need to understand it not only so that we can exercise it ethically, But so when people exercise it upon us, we can recognize when it is ethical or unethical. Now, I can guarantee you that you want more power. The reason I know you want more power is because you are in this class, because you are watching this video. If you did not want more power and influence and control over your life, you would just be doing whatever it is you're doing. But you do want that. And there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, we should all strive to have more power and influence and control in our lives. And so that's what we're going to talk about here in wrapping this up. By the way, one of the things that McGregor talks about here is power and influence and control and management is just like Henri Fayol said, this is not anything with absolute rules. It's something that is an art. I am going to read this one quote of his. The manual for a supervisory training program in one large company suggests that the instructor point out by analogy and example that the principles of an organization are like the laws of physics. They're not like the laws of physics. Laws of physics are highly controlled and predictable. It's math, and math is math, okay? Whereas an organization, a lot of moving, funky parts, right? Another gripe that that McGregor had that he was trying to overcome is he said, listen, in the past, before we looked at management as a science, we really got our principles of management from inappropriate sources, mainly religious and military, doctrines. Now, this is problematic, according to McGregor, for a few reasons. One is that there's no scientific method that has said that these principles espoused in Holy Writ and in military manuals work. It's just what's always been done. And remember what we talked about at the beginning of this class when it comes to, dogma and axioms. Dogma is something that is a principle that is set forth by an authority as incontrovertibly true. Well, you don't get much more authoritative than, say, the Bible or Sun Tzu's Art of War. And so we've just kind of accepted it as incontrovertibly true. Where McGregor says it's not. I mean, it depends on the situation. It depends on what's going on. None of this has ever been tested. Another thing that he said is, listen, a lot of principles of management were given in one context, but don't necessarily work in another context. This is what he called ethnocentrism. The idea that one solution works for all and situational leadership is not necessary. Remember, Henri Fayol said it all depends on the situation. And McGregor is agreeing. He's saying, okay, if we are in a wartime setting, one kind of management is appropriate, but if we're in a peacetime setting, a different kind of management is appropriate. If we are in a time of famine, we need to go one way. If we're a time of feast, we need to go another way. And what he's saying is these other sources that we've used, they've been kind of put forward as one size fit all. One size does not fit all, okay? Another one is that he felt that a lot of management theory that was out there, management that was not scientifically proven or situationally, directed, was making assumptions on erroneous assumptions. It was being based on erroneous assumptions and behavior. For example, remember I said that many managers think the only way you can motivate somebody is by paying them more. whereas the data says otherwise. Now, by the way, I want to be super clear. More money does mean more performance at a certain level. If you're making, say, $10 an hour and you get up to $15 an hour, that's motivating. That pushed you forward and so forth. But there's a certain point in which the law of depreciating return kicks in. Furthermore, it was always assumed that, beatings will continue until attitudes improve. Works. Remember the bad manager I told you about before that says the only way to motivate somebody is to threaten them? No, that isn't the way to motivate somebody. And yet back in that day, that was an erroneous assumption that actually had legs. Furthermore, McGregor said we cannot ignore the high degree of interdependence between the worker and the manager. He said this thrashing that we've been talking about the last 3 weeks or so, this contention between capital and labor, management and employees, we need to stop this. We need each other. You cannot be strategic without tactical. You cannot be tactical without strategic. Okay? So he really wanted folks to understand that we need each other. It's not us versus them. It's all of us together. He also said, hey, listen, you managers might think that you have all the power. You need to let go of that idea, because employees actually have a high degree of power. There are limits to the amount of authority that you can exert, dear manager, and that they will put up with. For example, these two employees here, they're they work on rockets. They work on jet engines, right? There's all kinds of ways that they can push back against authority. And we're not going to go into all of them, but I'll tell you one of my favorites. One of my favorites is kind of a principle that it's called many things, but I like to call it by the book. Here's the thing. Those two there, they have manuals that they have to follow. Safety manuals, process manuals, efficiency manuals, inventory manuals, all these processes, all these laws, rules, and regulations that they are expected to follow. Well, I don't have to tell you guys that most of those manuals are pretty much put on a shelf and allowed to get dusty, because these two know their job and they have figured out the most efficient, effective way of doing the work. And therefore, their productivity has been high. But if management pisses them off, they can say, well, I guess we're doing everything by the book now. In other words, things are going to be really slow from here on out. Productivity is going to plummet because they are going to check and double check every single line and box of every policy manual that has been dusty on the shelf. And what can management do about that? Nothing. You can't get mad at your employees for following the rules. That's just one of many tactics that employees can bring to bear to really check the authority of management. And so Douglas McGregor says, we need to stop this fighting. Okay, here are some, and this is what I'd really like to invite you to really think about and contemplate in your own lives. I'm going to talk about 6 areas of power and influence that you have, okay? And I want you to think about this. I don't want you to think in terms of, well, I don't have employees. I don't have power and influence. No, power and influence isn't about just being in an organization. I want you to think about what power and influence you hold over me. Not what I hold over you, but what you hold over me. And I'll show you what I mean. Okay, there are 3 kinds of power that McGregor would call authority. Now, we often call this formal power, but in the reading, when McGregor talks about authority, this is what he's talking about. The first one is legitimate or position power. And this just simply means, where are you on the org chart, right? So for example, I'm a professor. Therefore, if we go into Canvas, we see that the professor is, over all the students. I'm the professor, you're the student. Therefore, I have position power. Okay? All right. Not a highly effective or powerful type of power. But now I want you to think for a moment. What position power do you hold over me? And you might go, well, Lon, you just said it's an org chart and in Canvas, so it's professor and then students. No, actually, you hold a great deal of power. You hold power because the school is 100% focused on the student. And we are trying every single method we can of providing the very best, most flexible, most accessible, affordable education to you guys. And if you don't feel that you're getting that, you can escalate that. And your position as student gives you a fair degree of influence over how we teach our classes. All right, just a thought. Then we have reward power. Reward power is when I have something that you want, and therefore you are willing to do what I ask you to do because you want what I have. Well, now in the case of our classroom here, I have points. You want the points. I have all kinds of points. And you want these points. Therefore, you're willing to do what I ask you to do, the assignments, in order to get the points. You also want the information that I have regarding these readings. Therefore, you are willing to attend these live streams and to watch the videos afterwards because you want what I have, insights to these readings. Okay, what do you have that I want? Well, again, you might say, well, I don't have points. I don't have money. Well, I don't know what you want, Lon. No, you know what I want. I want interaction. I want engagement. I want to see, and I'm going to pull it up right here. Yeah, where is it? Where is it? Okay, hold on, sports fans. We have, oh my gosh, it's here somewhere. We have 12 people attending. Hey, that's a reward. We have 12 folks attending this live stream right now. You are giving me that reward. I want that reward, and so I try to make these live streams interesting. I try to make them compelling. I try to, bring in new technologies and so forth. In other words, I'm doing what you want me to do because I want what you have. I want your attention. Okay, the last one there, and these are on the formal types of power, is coercive power. Coercive power is the opposite of reward power. It is, what do you have that you really want that I can take away? Well, I can take away things. I can't take away points. I think you've earned the points, but I could take away these live streams. I could take away these videos. I could just say, hey, you know what? It's an online class now. It's all available. Do the reading. It's all online. Call me if you need me. Well, that would kind of suck. Not because you would miss my voice, Kermit the Frog voice here, but because without these insights, you have to be a little bit more studious about the readings. You have to dig into it more. You have to look at it and think, what am I supposed to pay attention to? What am I not? Therefore, you don't want me to take these videos away. And so you're willing to do what I'm asking you to do because you don't want them taken away. What about you to me? What could you take away that's valuable to me? You could stop attending these. You could stop watching them. You could take away your subscription to Nutshell Brainery. You could just phone in the work. You could stop thinking about it and just kind of, coast through. That would break my heart. I really want us to enjoy these things together. Therefore, you could take those things away from me, and that would punish me. That's coercive power that you hold over me. Okay, now, as it says here, these are formal types of power. But more effective, more effective than formal power is the personal power. This is where real influence comes to bear. The first one is expert power. Expert power is when I have an expertise that you want access to. And therefore, because you want access to this expertise, you're willing to do what I ask you to do. So it's kind of like when somebody at work, they are the expert on this system. And whenever you have a question, you go to them and ask them because they are like the go-to person, right? Well, you tend to take care of this person because you need them. Well, what expert power do you hold over me? Well, I'll tell you what you have. You have a greater understanding of what it's like to work in today's economic environment as a new employee. I haven't been a new employee working from a college perspective in 30 years, right? The world is different. You have a better understanding of what that's like. Furthermore, you have insights into industries that I know nothing about. I don't know anything about X, Y, Z. These are industries that you work in. Therefore, I really, really, really want to know how you apply the principles we talk about in this class to those industries. So yes, you have expert power. The next one is referent power. Referent power is when you do what somebody asks you to do just because you look up to them. You admire them. You have reverence for them. Therefore, you allow them to influence you. These might be religious leaders. These might be political leaders, folks that you look up to. They could also be celebrities. This is why we see a lot of celebrity endorsements and so forth, because they have referent power. When so-and-so is out there trying to sell a new pair of shoes and we all go off and buy those shoes, that's referent power. This is where like Instagram and social media influencers get their power. They're influential. I have a new microphone, right? Sure, it's upside down. I have a new microphone that I purchased so that I could make the sound for these live streams more effective, or better, I should say. Why did I buy that particular microphone? Because a YouTuber who did a whole bunch of reviews on it said this is the one to buy. That's referent power and expert power, by the way. I'm not going to ask if I have referent power with you. That's inappropriate. But I will say you have referent power with me. You have referent power because you are working hard in college. Not easy. You're probably working outside of school as well. You have friends and family. You have obligations there that you're trying to balance. And yet you are still attending these live streams. You're still watching this video and trying to do your best. Damn, that's not easy. I know that's not easy. Anybody who tries to say, oh, well, you've got it all. No, that's hard. So I want to be respectful of that and deliver to you the best education I can, understanding that you're being pulled in multiple directions. And I look up to that and I admire that. Okay, last one, network power. Network power is when I can influence you because I know people you want access to. For example, one day you might want a recommendation for a particular school program. You might want a referral for a employer. Yeah, I'm in your network, and there may be a day that you go, you know what, I think a recommendation from Lon may not be too shabby. I'm going to make sure that I deliver a decent semester to him, because when I want a recommendation, I want him to be able to refer me, without reservation. In the same way, join LinkedIn. Seriously, join LinkedIn. We'll talk about this more later in the semester. But join LinkedIn and put me as a reference, because I have access to a wide network of professionals in Utah and the West and so forth. You want access to this. Okay. Do you have network power over me? Yes, you have network power over me. I want you to tell your friends to take my classes. I want you to tell your friends, family, and coworkers to watch my videos and to subscribe to my channel. I want you to tell others that a class with Lon Schiffbauer you could do a lot worse than, okay? Because this is how I maintain my sense of relevance in the industry, by bringing in students, providing good instructional material, and by being seen as a value-add asset in somebody's education and professional development. Yes, you have network power over me. Okay? So, we're not going to worry about that. That takes care of that. So, we have just gone over 3 readings really fast. We did it in 1 hour. Holy smoke, 1 hour. Not too shabby. What I'd like to do now, as you see, is I have the chat open. So if there are any questions, if any comments or anything, let's go ahead and chime in. Otherwise, if you're all set, you can drop off. And if you're watching this video after, the live stream, we're all done with the lecture side. Now let's just look after questions. So, let me find out any questions. Juan was able to join us, as well as Israel. That's awesome. Thank you, guys. I'm just going to sit and hold tight. Drew, thanks, Lon. Really enjoy the rest of your day. I will. I'm going to do a couple more of these, and then I'm shooting a new video today. I'm shooting a video on the 5 functions of management. So, looking forward to that. Okay, Tony, no live stream on Wednesday. I'm going to hold these live streams on just Mondays. And my goal is to always get through all the readings in one live stream. So today we did all 3 readings. Normally we'd break that in 2. So this is the only one. Good question. Let's see what else we have here. My voice keeps cracking. Oh. Tyler, you bet. Glad you could join. Always glad. I enjoy doing these things, but it's nice when there's an audience. Hey, Nick, cool. Thank you, too. Okay, well, it looks like I don't see any questions, Tony. Take it easy. We'll see you next week. I don't see any other questions coming in. Of course, if you do have any, you can email me, Canvas. We're on remind.com. Send me a text. Otherwise, guys, have a fantastic week. Stay connected, stay safe, and we'll see you next week. Have a great day.